Howdy folks, and welcome back to Tiger Day 2016 at the Bovington Tank Museum. I was invited down once again as a guest at the museum in order to get some filming done, and thought what better place to start than the Vehicle Conservation Centre, which is only open to the public a couple of days of the year, Tank Fest and Tiger Day being two of them. World of Tanks and Armoured Warfare fans, see if you can name the vehicles. No, it's not an AMX-13, it's a Panhard armoured car with the AMX-13 turret. All kinds of vehicles on display here in the Conservation Centre when they're not actually being worked on, like this Swingfire, available in Armoured Warfare as a Tier 4 armoured fighting vehicle. And for you World of Tanks fans, the FV4202 and the Conway. Sadly, the FV4202, well, the trunnions that mount the gun in the turret are a little bit broken, and that's why it's pointing up at that weird angle. It's unlikely to be repaired anytime soon. Just on the other side of the FV4202 is one of my favourite vehicles in the Vehicle Conservation Centre. It's actually a highly modified Centurion tank. There it is. Look at all of that extra armour bolted on to the left-hand side of the vehicle. In particular, that raised armour plate right there in the centre line of the tank. That's actually there to protect the driver. Somebody would actually have to get into this thing and drive it up and down a firing range while being shot at by other tanks. I don't know about you, but to me that sounds like a really good motivation to not get onto the Sergeant Major's shit list. Another of my favourite machines, which is sadly no longer on display in the main museum itself and is now in the Vehicle Conservation Centre, is the American M103 heavy tank. The Continental engine in the back of this thing produced so much heat. Just have a look at the radiator exhaust fins here and look at how badly warped they've become by engine heat. Of course, here's the thing, heat has a tendency to rise. And if you have a look at that big old overhang at the back of the turret, that's where the commander sits. Things could get very toasty warm in there, which I suppose isn't a bad thing if you're on exercise in the plains of northern Germany in the winter. Meanwhile, tucked in behind the Kanonen Jagdpanzer 90, I thought I'd spotted a very, very rare find, a surviving German First World War A7V tank, only 20 of which were made. Unfortunately, no, it's just a replica. There's only one surviving A7V in the world, and believe it or not, it's actually in Australia, at the Australian War Memorial in Canberra. Speaking of sole surviving tanks, tucked in there between the M4 Sherman and the Mark III Churchill, you can see what is apparently now the only surviving T-14 heavy tank in the world. Only two were ever made, one for Britain and one for America. Apparently I hear the bottom has fallen out of the one in America, which is bad news for America, but it's great news for the Bovington Tank Museum because by default they are, once again, the holders of one of the only examples of a tank left in the world, the T-14 heavy. I do love coming down to the Tank Museum. I must have been here 9 or 10 times by now. I've been through the Vehicle Conservation Centre at least half a dozen times, and you'd think that you'd get bored, but there's always something new tucked away that I've somehow managed to overlook the last time I came down. Even though it's pretty damn big for a museum, they do have limited available floor space in the actual museum itself, so they're always shuffling the vehicles around between the main display hall and the Vehicle Conservation Centre, so every time you come down to the main display hall, there's almost always something new on display there as well, even if you don't have access to the Vehicle Conservation Centre. On Tiger Day, of course, the museum is absolutely packed. This was the biggest ever Tiger Day that they've done so far. They had 3,500 visitors through the gates on the day, and that's just a pale shadow of the kind of numbers that you can expect to see on Tank Fest in June. I should warn you, by the way, Tank Fest tickets for June this year are almost sold out, so if you are planning on coming down to the Bovington Tank Museum for Tank Fest, particularly on the Saturday, get your tickets booked now. Last year's Tank Fest was the biggest ever. 20,000 people visited the museum over the course of the weekend, and I think I might have shook hands and had my picture taken with at least half of them. This time around you can expect that sort of thing to be substantially better organised. But now it's time for a quick, do you know what it is yet? Who knows what this tank is? It's got 3 Cadillac car engines in the back. It's from Australia. It was recently introduced into World of Tanks, and you'll recognise it when you see the armoured machine gun cover at the front that Rita is, for some strange reason, just unable to make eye contact with. The Australian AC-1 Sentinel. Instantly recognisable. Of course, you've got all of your old favourites and standbys at the Tank Museum as well. The Jagdtiger is still on display with the access hatch open at the back so you can look inside the fighting compartment from the raised panel to the rear. The Tog 2, possibly one of the worst tanks ever built, but it's got charm, and charm will do. We've got the Conqueror, we've got the Chieftain, we've got the Challenger, we've got the Tiger 2. One of 2 Tiger 2s that they actually have here at the Tank Museum, although neither of them are in running order. If you want to see a working Tiger 2 go through its paces, you're going to have to go to France at the Tank Museum there. This Tiger II was actually knocked out by a British Sherman Firefly, and around the other side of the tank, if you look just underneath the skirts, you can see the hole where the 17-pounder gun knocked it out. Another old favourite, the A39 Tortoise, now repaired, no longer in the Vehicle Conservation Centre and in the main display hall, where it should be. And speaking of favourites, the Panzerjaeger 38T, more affectionately referred to as the Hetzer and the Jagdpanther, although I do definitely prefer the Hetzer because, well, it's far cuter, and also, it hetzers. And all you World of Tanks fans now have no excuse for not visiting the Tank Museum, because you can play World of Tanks here. They've got a bunch of Xbox 360s set up, and now you too can fail at playing World of Tanks, even on the Xbox 360, just like Junior here. Never mind, son, better luck next time. Let's not forget, of course, Britain invented the tank, and with 2016 being the 100th anniversary of the tank's first use in battle, you can guarantee that the Tank Museum are going to capitalise on this, and they've put a huge amount of effort into revamping their First World War display hall. For Tankfest this year, on the programme of events, they're also wheeling David Fletcher out to do a live version of his Tank Chat YouTube videos on the Challenger 2 and the Mark IV replica tank that they have here from the First World War at the Tank Museum. Getting quite excited looking at the programme for Tankfest actually. One of the afternoon displays that they're putting on involves recreating the battle in 1943 in Tunisia, where Tiger 131 was actually knocked out and captured. So you can expect to see Tiger 131 battling various different M3 and M5 Stuarts and Churchills in the main arena for Tankfest. Well, that's all well and good, Jingles, you old hack fraud, but this is a Tiger Day video. Where's the bloody tiger? Well, alright, be patient. Tiger 131 and various other tanks actually rolled out into the arena early in the afternoon on Tiger Day. And shortly before they were due to set out, I popped around backstage to the tank marshalling area to have a quick look, as well as talk to some of the engineers and mechanics. Unsurprisingly, one of the first things that you clap your eyes on when you come out the back, ready to have a look at which vehicles are going to be rolling out, is the world-famous M4A3E8 Sherman Fury Star of Stage Screen and Dockyard Canteen. Because, well, if you had Fury, you would probably show it off to the public on every possible opportunity as well. Also running out today, the Centurion, unsurprising, but that's a Comet, as well as the Valentine infantry tank and the A11 Matilda up to the front, and I've never seen a live Comet running around the arena anywhere before. Going back to the Fury for a second, you can see the crew standing around in period American uniform. The gent on the far left actually worked on the movie. A lot of the drivers of the Shermans that you saw in the movie were employees of the Tank Museum. Speaking of employees of the Tank Museum, let's have a talk with one of them about the A11 Matilda. Tell us about this Matilda A11.
Well, it was, most of it was recovered from the ranges at Lead. Originally it had, I believe, about 75 shot holes in the side, and the restorer left just one as evidence of its previous life. If you look very, very closely, you can sometimes make out where the grain is slightly different, where he's filled it in, but he chopped off lengths of bar, pressed it in and then welded it inside and out and buffed it off, so you can't see any of the other damage. I believe the wheels came from a similar suspension from a vehicle in Norway, the Russian T-26, and I think that this is actually a conglomerate of about three, remains of three put together.
Well, thanks very much.
I'll tell you really, the originally would have had a Ford V8 and a crash gearbox, but at the time they were restoring it they couldn't get that, and so in fact it runs on a Rover V8 with an automatic gearbox, which was the only thing big enough, powerful enough that would go in the very short space for the engine and gearbox. It's the only running A13 running and moving A13 in the world. In fact, there's only about 3 or 4 of them altogether, and 3 of them are here. There's a smashed one, there's a complete one in the museum, which is run a bull but hasn't run in living memory. And then there's this one, and I believe there's one elsewhere, but although I don't know where.
And that's pretty much it.
Beautiful smoke discharges made by me.
Ha! Let's have a closer look. Just a cut down Enfield rifle?
Yes, that's right, yeah, with 4-inch tube, and you put basically a blank cartridge in the mechanism, and then a big smoke grenade in the barrel, and it lobs it out about 100 yards.
Right. There you go, straight from the horse's mouth. Alright Jingles, stop wasting time. Where's the bloody Tiger? Well, the Tiger was actually still inside the display hall, where the crew were firing it up and getting ready to literally reverse it right out of the back of the display hall and straight on the track here, where it could take its place in the procession. And that's when I heard the sound of a tank engine revving up, so I set the camera up on the tripod and I got ready to capture Tiger 131 coming out of the display hall, live and direct, here on YouTube with the mighty Jingles, Tiger Day 2016. Listen to that roar. That's not the Tiger. That's the Panzer III. Oh, what the hell. We'll watch it anyway. Well, that was very nice, I'm sure you'll agree, but it's not what we came here for. So, come on, Tiger 131, it's got to be coming out next. Cameraman's rushing over there, that's one of the Tank Museum staff. There's obviously something happening. Is that a tiger I can hear? There you go, Tiger. Happy now? Satisfied? Well, don't be, because there's plenty more coming. Previously on visits to the Tank Museum when I've been filming, I've pretty much had to take my chances in the crowd with everybody else, but this time the Tank Museum not only allowed me to go backstage, as it were, here, and filming all of the machines as they were being set up in the marshalling area before heading out into the arena, but I didn't have to stand in the arena with the rest of the crowd. Instead, I got a fantastic camera vantage point actually inside the arena. So I had a selection of available camera positions from which to capture these steel beasts as they rolled out in front of the audience. Speaking of which, here they come. And that, folks, is pretty much it for Tiger Day 2016. There was actually a lot more going on inside the museum. They had displays of artefacts that accompanied Tiger 131's capture in 1943 in Tunisia, and all other kinds of displays that were actually going on inside the museum, but I just couldn't get close to them. The crowds were ferocious. Nevertheless, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you at Tankfest 2016 later on in June this year. I hear that the Royal Dutch Army is sending a Leopard to a fall-along, as well as various other displays, including a C-47 Dakota fly-past on both days and a P-40 Curtiss Kitty Hawk fly-past on both days, as well as all the tanks that we've come to know and love. I have to give my thanks to the Tank Museum, by the way, without whom I wouldn't have been able to do nearly as good a video on Tiger Day 2016 this year, and I did have a fantastic time at Tiger Day 2016, as I'm sure everybody who attended did. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. We're going to finish off with Tiger 131 leaving the arena, and of course that means I'm going to have to crank the volume back up again, just so you can hear what this thing sounds like when it's moving. That's it for today, folks. Take care, and I'll catch you next time.